Hey guys, and welcome back to Regrexit. Brexit England, Northern Ireland, Eastern Europe, and our good friends in the USA. And welcome back to By Any Means Necessary. Iain Watkins has been smoked unalived in prison. Iain Watkins has been unalived in prison. And all I can say, this is an absolute, what? Just listen, do me a favour, just mind your own business, thank you. It's not even funny. Poetic justice. Poetic justice. What's it got to do with poetry? That's a different thing. Oh, okay. Listen, and do me a favour, you're just going to do whatever it is you do. He's a DJ from Brother Charleston. Right? So, Iain Watkins smoked in prison, unalived, in jail. Now, you tell me this, right? How can Iain Watkins be murdered in prison? That should never, ever happen. Ever. Iain Watkins, right, should be a segregated prisoner. All the way along. He should be a segregated prisoner. Right? They should never be able to get to him. Right? It's only trustees. Right? As a prisoner, it's only a trustee that could probably get anywhere near him. And that'll be just to take them their food or whatever. So it's only trustees. Or if they was in the gardens or whatever in the prison, right, there might be trustees around there that, fixing up the flowers or whatever. But it should be a complete and utter embarrassment to the prison system in Great Britain, because that is a complete and utter breakdown in the system that such a high-profile prisoner can be murdered in prison. People. There's gonna be a lot of people who lose their job over that shit because they've got to. High-profile prisoners, right, should not be murdered in prison. Doesn't matter what's your crime, but let's talk about his crime, because his crime was really disgusting. And I say, well, how do you feel about Iain Watkins being smoked, unalived, in jail? No, nothing. No. I'm leaning more towards happiness rather than sadness. But that doesn't take away the fact, right, that the prison system has completely let themselves down, because they haven't let anyone down by Iain Watkins being killed. Okay, let's get that point straight across. No one's been let down in that sense, but they've let themselves down by allowing it to happen. Listen, I'm one of the people. I believe that that people should be able to go to prison and rot right there. I think that's a better way, right? Rather than the death penalty. I think that's a much better way to allow people to go to prison and rot in prison. And even if they get a serious illness, right, I would prefer us to pay, right, their medical bills to keep them alive to go back into prison. I'd much prefer to do that, right? Because I'm sure, right, that if you are, say, like you're in your 20s or whatever, right, and that a lot of them guys in the USA, they're getting sentences that are just like, in the 200, 300 years, right? So they know they're never coming out of jail. And if you're in your 20s, right, and you're unfortunate to live for the next 8 years, right, then you say you're 21 years old, right, and you live for the next 80 years. I mean, they'll probably let you out. The truth is, they'll probably let you out after 70 years or so. Right? They'll probably say, you know what, yeah, you can go. Up to 70 years. But could you imagine, right, so because then you'll be in your 90s. I mean, you could say your whole life has gone past, but you could say that your life has just begun at that point. Right? At that point, when you come out of prison at 21, right, you come out of prison and you're 91 years old, right? You could say, you know what, life's just beginning, because I mean, in the way it is. But no, I much prefer those type of sentences, right, where people go and they just rot in prison and leave their ass right there. But going back to Iain Watkins, right, was one of the worst paedophiles to have ever lived, because this man, right, was interfering with babies. And when I say babies, I'm talking about actual babies, right? Actual babies, right? Not not a 2-year-old, not a 2-year-old, oh, baby. No, we're talking about babies. This man was, right, and I believe it was Peaches Geldof who grassed him up. Oh shit! Now that's the wrong terminology for that, isn't it? Right? Because you can't say, well, she tattled, right? She G'd him up. No, what she done was she told the police. And you see, there's a major difference in grassing and telling the police. Because, for things like rape or for paedophilia, right, then, no one's grassed up for that. People just go and tell the police. It's not grass. There's not a grassing offence, right? A grassing up offence, right, is if you and your brethren go and do something, right, and then the two of you get caught, and you keep your mouth closed, and your brethren's in there singing like a goddamn pretty little bird. That's grassing. That right there was grassing. But when you inform the police about a paedophile or a rapist, then that's there's no grass in there, because you could have told the police about 100 of them, right? And then if you was to end up in prison for something else, right, and all the prisoners would find out, oh yeah, look, yeah, he done that. So people would be like, yeah, okay, that's all right. Trust me, all right. So I couldn't imagine, right, that it would have taken Peaches Geldof more than 1 minute before she found out, right, and when she made up in her mind that she was going to go and tell the police. Because if it does take you longer than a minute, right, to do that, right, then you've got to have some serious issues, right? If you have to contemplate, oh well, I found out Iain Watkins is like, messing around with a baby. I mean, it's not really the type of thing that you need to contemplate for very long. And I'm talking seconds in your mind. That's what I'm talking about, right? Because for me, it would just be a split second, and that's me. I'm on the phone to the police, right? And if Iain Watkins is there with me, right, I'm going to tell the police in front of him. If I found that out, and then Iain Watkins was in front of me, I'm telling the police right then and there. Right? And if Iain Watkins decided, well, he wants to beat me down, I said, well, good luck with that. I said, good luck with that, Mr. Watkins. But anyway, he has been unalived in prison, and the British government should feel completely... Sorry, the prison system. I could come down to the British government, but let's just go with the prison system. Should feel completely... I mean, can you say the prison system, though? Because, I think he was in Wakefield prison, right? So, is it just that prison? Or do we have to look at all prisons and say, oh, you're all responsible? Because that's a bit harsh, isn't it, really? So, because this has happened in one prison, and there's going to be serious paedophiles in other prisons who haven't been murdered. It's on, and because that's why they don't put them in general population, yeah? Simply because they would not last very long, right? If like Iain Watkins, yeah, if he went in the general population, right, and he got 1 night in there, I'd be very surprised. I'd be very, very surprised if he was to get 1 night in general population. Right? So I don't even know how they got to him. I should have done some research into that. But what I would say to you is this, right? I don't really need to do research into knowing that Iain Watkins, right, would be in a segregated position. Right? I don't need to do any research into that, because wherever you are in the world, if you go to prison for those type of offences, right, you have to be segregated off, and it's not even like you can be segregated off, yeah, with other paedophiles, because other paedophiles will take a very dim, view to what you've done. If you got like even your regular paedophiles don't want to get held with these people. People who mess about with babies, they are not into even a regular, like, you know, a paedophile that's like they're not actually paedophile. Someone who's like who has unlawful sex with someone who's with a minor, yeah, someone who's like over 12 years old, right? Those kind of people, they don't want to be held with people like Iain Watkins. But it's very strange, right? Because I do know that it's two people that have smoked Iain Watkins, right? So, you know, and with a knife as well. Well, a shank, will more be a shank in prison. But look, let's have a look at this report, right? You know, because the reports about this have been all over the news. So let's have a look at this report and see how much information we can get from this report.
A convicted murderer and a convicted rapist have been named as two men that have murdered Lost Prophets singer Iain Watkins, who is 48 years old, inside H&P Wakefield on Monday, the 11th of October. Iain Watkins himself was a convicted paedophile that had committed horrific acts against children and had been jailed for 29 years. Police in West Yorkshire have gone on to charge two men in relation to his murder. Rashid Gendel, 25 years old, and Samuel Dodsworth, 43 years old, both from H&P Wakefield, have been charged with murder. And in relation to Rashid, who has been charged with murder...
Oh, my God. Do you know, I was going to bring you some more videos, right, about the two murderers, but I've just realised who one of them is. Broad Day A. He is like, he's a drill rap artist, yeah, who has been... The other guy's a rapist. The other guy who he murdered him with. Very strange, isn't it, that a murderer and a rapist get together and kill a paedophile. But you know, but it's strange that those people are housed together. And I mean, especially like having someone like, I don't know how come Broadway was on the same wing as him, because this suggests that Iain Watkins must have been in general population, but. He would have had to have. I mean, you can understand the rapist being like, you know, them trying to house those people together, thinking, well, you know what, he's a rapist, he's a paedophile, they'll be all right. But that's really not the case. But then that doesn't explain why Broadale was on that wing, because he's a drill artist, right? And you know, he's a drill. Let's put it this way, yeah. He's had what this, I believe, is his fourth murder that he's been caught up in. His fourth murder that he's been caught up in. Now, he did bust two cases, yeah? I believe he bust two murder cases, and now he's in prison for a different murder, right? So he did bust two cases, so obviously he was not guilty on those, right? Even though he's been found guilty for the next one, what he's been convicted of. So we can say, yes, well, he's been found guilty of that one, so that one he's convicted of. And now he's been caught up in this as well. Boy, he don't ever want to come home. He don't ever want to come home. Because I'm sure he's probably, because the murder that just think what happened before. I'm sure the murder that he got caught up in before, yeah, was a young professional, yeah, doctor or a lawyer or something like that. The guy was a young professional who had nothing to do with drill music or gang life, and he got murdered in a mistake. He was unalived in the case of mistaken identity. So, and that's what he's in jail for. And now that he's been caught up in this as well, Iain Watkins, I can't believe what I've just seen. Well, I've just seen the report and I've thought, hold on a minute, I know this. My God, it's unbelievable. But because he's just like, but I don't understand what he was doing on the same wing with Iain Watkins. Because if they're putting on a wing like that, then I wouldn't think that Iain Watkins would have lasted this long. Because, I mean, it's not as if this is the first time that Iain Watkins has been, he got attacked a couple of years ago. He got, 2023? I'm sure he was taken hostage by a couple of lags. And I'm sure in the process he got stabbed. Right? If I can remember correctly, yeah, I'm sure they had to throw stun grenades in there, right, to stun the couple that grabbed him up and had him hostage, yeah. And I believe that was over a debt, a drug debt, right? So you see, because things with prison, right, is, all drugs are in prison, and because of the price of drugs in prison, it's worth people taking them into the prison, because the stricter they make it, um, yeah, is the more expensive the drugs are. But so the drugs will always go in, because if you're talking about something on the street, yeah, let's say like an ounce of weed, for example, that's worth like say £200 on the street, for example. Right, I don't know if you paid that for it, but I don't know nothing about it myself. But say £200, right, for an ounce of weed on the street. Well, that makes it £400 for an ounce in prison. So you see, it's when you're looking at it and breaking it down, right, it's going to be worthwhile to a lot of people to try and get it in there. So you can understand how Iain Watkins could have a drug debt of around £1,200. That's what I believe it was, around £1,200. And the prisoners that he must have, I don't know if it was them that he owed money to, but whoever it was, they took him hostage for. It's very strange, isn't it? You think so, because that story's not going to go very well for you when you have to go and explain that to a court. Yes, we took him hostage, Your Honour, because he owed us £1,200 for some drugs. That's not going to go well for you in prison. In fact, that's going to go really bad for you. Anyway, listen, there's another story I want to bring you from America. I think that's all. I think that's all I need to say about Watkins, because I mean, what more should be said about a man like that? But there is another story that I want to show you that's from America, yeah, of happens to be a rap artist in America and his friend, yeah, who you know what? Just let me show you what they've done, and then we'll come back on the
In
other side.
September 2019, DeMarcus George and Mario Waters were both indicted on federal charges of sex trafficking of a minor and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of a minor. At the time of his arrest, DeMarcus George was 28 years old and Mario Waters was around 32. Now, you might wonder, how did these guys get in all this trouble? Well, let's talk about it. According to reports, in February 2018, a 6-year-old was taken to Arkansas Children's Hospital by her mother. Now, the child was taken for a variety of symptoms, but while at Arkansas Children's Hospital, it was discovered that the child's symptoms were the result of gonorrhea and HIV. I'm just going to assume that if you're old enough to listen to this video, you are old enough to know what gonorrhea is. According to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, a former babysitter of the newspaper told police that the child actually had symptoms for several months before she was finally taken to Arkansas Children's Hospital, but the mother of the child was afraid that the child would be removed from her care if she took the child to the hospital, and they started investigating, so the mother just didn't take her. So that was in February 2018, but in June 2018, the child actually started showing different symptoms and was taken back to the hospital, where she was at that point syphilis and chlamydia. So we have a 6-year-old who has now been diagnosed with syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and HIV. And doctors at Children's Hospital knew this child wasn't born with HIV, so the only way that this child could have contracted HIV was through sexual contact. Police were able to interview the child, the victim in this case, and she was able to tell exactly who it was that did this to her. It was a man that she called Daddy, who was DeMarcus George, the boyfriend of her mother, and a man that she called Uncle Red, who was Mario Waters. Now, the child also gave specific details of what the room looked like where this happened, which was a hotel room that she described in great detail, including decorations, pictures on the wall, and like the bed, everything, like where it happened. As it turns out, police believe that DeMarcus George essentially pimped this 6-year-old out, and they were able to test DeMarcus George and Mario Waters, and both of them had the STDs that the child had. Speaking specifically about HIV, and I don't have all the information, but I believe that there are medications that you can be put on that if you take care of yourself well enough, your HIV can be in a somewhat dormant state. But it was DeMarcus George that actually tested positive for HIV. So that is who it was that gave this 6-year-old child HIV. DeMarcus George got 2 enhancements, one because he was a parent or guardian of the victim in this case. Gross. And the second one was because The offense involved the commission of a sex act. He got a reduction because he admitted guilt in this case, and that's HIV. DeMarcus George was sentenced to life in federal prison. There was actually a major issue in Mario Waters' case where the defense attorney was let go by the judge. The defense attorney, it turned out, did not explain the pre-sentencing guidelines or whatever it was to Mario Waters ahead of time in detail. And Mario Waters actually did not see it until the day before he was to go to court. The automatically called out the defense attorney for not doing his job and basically just sent him packing. So Mario Waters had to be given another attorney and had to go through the process all over again. And I do want to say that Mario Waters told the court that these actions were basically something that was headed by DeMarcus George. And he even said at one point, DeMarcus George held a gun to his head. That being said, the victim in the case told police that DeMarcus George let Mario Waters come over. Mario Waters performed acts on her and then gave DeMarcus George money. So take that for what you will. So Mario Waters also pled guilty to conspiracy to commit sex trafficking involving a minor. His sentencing hearing was pretty rough. It seemed like the judge went back and forth battling really what sentence he should give Mario Waters. He said that had Mario Waters been sentenced first in his court, he would have given him a life sentence, but DeMarcus George was sentenced first in court, and DeMarcus George was the one that infected the girl with HIV. And so he wrestled with the idea of giving Mario Waters the same sentence that he gave DeMarcus George when Mario Waters, yes, may have infected the girl with an STI or whatever, but it wasn't HIV. The recommended sentencing range for Mario Waters was 234 to 293 months in federal prison, which would have been, I don't know, up to just under 25 years. Actually said the likelihood of you ever getting out are slim, and if you do, it'll be so far in the future that none of this will even matter. Well, that judge was right. On Monday, January 15th, news came out that Mario Waters, who had been in prison at Terre Haute, I probably mispronounced that, but he had been at prison at Terre Haute Federal Prison Facility, had died after an altercation with another inmate. Excuse me, it actually said perceived altercation with another inmate. It seems that prison guards found him after an alleged altercation. They did attempt life-saving measures, but he just did not survive. So that judge was correct. He didn't make it out of prison. Now, I did see that this is the second death since December that has been reported from Terre Haute. Now, I do want to say, because a lot of people will wonder what happened to the victim in this case. The victim in this case was actually taken from her mother's care, and she was adopted.
Well, as you can see, after having to review those stories there, yeah, it's just like you just feel like dirty, filthy, just like things are just crawling all over you, you know, and it's just like you could just have a good bath, or a good shower. Because that's just there's people. There's some real. You know, you can't even say just wrong-uns. They are wrong-uns, but just like they've gone past that stage of being just wrong-uns. These people are the real, the devil on the earth. You know, it's I mean, it's amazing that these people seem to be in populations in the prisons where people have access to their cells and stuff like that, because you'd think such high-profile prisoners, yeah, would have to be segregated off, and I would think that they would be segregated off at all stages. I mean, you know, getting on to, you know, Mario Waters, who is a rap artist. He's a drill artist, I believe, right? And you know, so getting onto him, yeah, because he said that the other guy, DeMarcus, whatever his name is, yeah, he said he put a gun to his head, which doesn't sound feasible. I think that was a really stupid, you know, mitigation, because that's not a defense. That's like some mitigation, I'm sure. Or could it be defense? I don't know. I mean, because they put a gun to your head and say, "Listen, you're going to do it." Then I mean, that is a defense to say, "Well, listen, the man. Look, I can show you. I can show you the video of him doing that to." I mean, that's a defense to say, "Well, listen, I had to do it, or he's going to put a bullet in me." right? So that is defense you could try and use, but you know, if I was a judge, I'd sit there and say, well, I'd have to fight him down, and you know, I'd probably have to go for the bullet, mate, rather than do the acts what you done to that child. And then it seems like you gave him some money in front of the child. So I'm not sure whether or not that is even believable, that someone would hold a gun to your head and make you essay a 6-year-old child. What kind of friends are those? I mean, with friends like that, who needs enemies? And but I mean, you know, the thing is, right? See, I don't know how these people, you know, how they get this discussion going, because I mean, look, you know, I suppose it's similar to, like, you know, Giselle Pellico, right? All those men who went round there, because there was over 50 or 60 men in it who was in the court case, right? But all those men who went round there, right? You know, if I was invited to that type of scenario, right? You know, I'd have to go, right, just to make sure and see what's going on, because I mean, if it's like, you know, it just might be like one of your friends, right, who's got that type of sense of humor, who thinks that type of thing is funny. I couldn't find that thing funny, but they might find that type of thing funny, saying, yeah, we've got this, and they're just messing about, right? So you just have to go, and then when you see, they're like, you go there, you see Giselle Pellico, and she's unconscious, or you go to the hotel room and see the 6-year-old child, it'd be like, yeah, God, I've got a stomachache. Or, you know what, I'm going to go get some food. Something to get yourself out of the room so you can go and phone the police. Right? And for me, I'd go down, you know, if I went to that 6-year-old girl in the hotel room, I would just go down to the lobby, phone the police, and I said to them, please get here as quickly as possible. And when the police get there, I say, listen, please bring them down this way, so they have to come past me in the lobby so I can cuss them out. And please make sure that you at least stand there for a couple of minutes so I can cuss them out and tell them I just went downstairs and just told the police exactly what you're up there doing. Okay? Because I want them to know. Because, you know, the good thing is, from that day, if the police go in there and catch them in that room, from that day, you know that you're never going to see them again out on road. Unless you see them again in 40 or 50 years' time. But that's the story of what's going to happen to them. But no, I just wonder how people can get themselves into that situation. But then, you know, I believe that he's obviously, Mario Waters has obviously paid his friend, right, to essay this 6-year-old child. And that's just like, these guys are just absolute filth. You know, the same as like Iain Watkins, over here. But as I said, yeah, the access that, you know, the other prisoners who have committed serious offences like murder, for example. Right? I don't see how these guys are mixing with these people, but for some reason, the prison system seems to be doing that. I mean, unless these guys are going in there thinking to themselves, you know something, I'm too scared to commit Harry myself. Smoke yourself. Too scared to do that, right? So they decide, well, you know what? I'm going to go in general population, see how long it takes for someone to do me in. But then, you know, you go murder someone in prison. Do you know what I mean? You just like, especially if you're already on a murder charge or whatever, right? You're going to get yourself another 25 or 30 years. And it's not going to be, it's not going to be to run concurrent either. There's no concurrent. You're not going to get concurrent. Not when you do that in prison. There's no concurrent. Right? So it's just going to be a consecutive sentence to run on top of what you've already got. Anyway, guys, listen. I have to bow out of here. But listen, what I'll ask you to do is please have a look at some of my previous videos. Look out for videos I'm going to be doing that, because I've got one I'm going to be doing about all these flags that have been going up. And plus I've got a breakdown of one of the people from their far-right Unite the Kingdom rally. So I'm going to be doing them this week. So I want you to look out for those. But please, look out for some of my previous work, because for some reason, my videos are being censored, especially when I speak about certain regions. Try and watch my documentary on the Epstein files, yeah? Because I'd like a lot more people to watch that, because for some reason, they won't let me promote it, so that the whole of, of these sites that I'm on, everyone on there can see them. Can't promote them. Not my fault. I don't know why, but have a look at these pictures that I'm going to show you at the end here, and you might be able to work it out and tell me why. My friends, I'm going to bow out of here. My name is UMC John Ribbs. It was really nice to speak to you guys. I'll see you guys soon.